meaning, algorithms, nutrition, treatment, and medicine. What do these 5 seemingly enormous disconnected topics have in common? These are 5 areas where 5 people that changed history saw a problem, used their hope to ignite their passions, created objectives, and put a plan together and took action, and they changed the world.
Welcome to the Hope is Not a Plan podcast, where we address tough questions head on, face our problems, and highlight our hopes by providing actionable planning steps to improve ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. Now, let's get logged in and get locked on to this episode of the Hope is Not a Plan podcast.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for coming back to the Hope is Not a Plan podcast. I am your host, Kevin Pinnell. Website is hopeisnotaplan.org. Please give it a visit. I've recently uploaded some past video interviews of me, by me, and some educational videos. Today, I'm going to start the first of a 4-part series where I highlight 5 people who did what this podcast is all about, who have inspired me, some new information that I've learned. They saw a problem. They used their hope. They didn't dismiss it. They put together an objective, and then they took action. And the first person we're going to start with today is Viktor Frankl. I've talked about him. He's changed my life with his work. And the problem that he saw was a pretty big one, right? He witnessed the devastating effects of Nazi concentration camps. And they devastated his family, who was killed, and him, who went through a horrible time, was tortured, working in freezing conditions. The hope that he had, though, was that humans could find meaning in life through a sense of purpose, which is astounding considering the conditions that this man was in. So what objective did he make? His objective was to share experience to help others find meaning in their lives. Imagine that. And I think that's such a great thing, right? Someone went through a horrible event. They learned something. They suffered. And then they said, you know what? I need to use this to help other people. So what actions did Viktor Frankl take? He developed logotherapy, and logotherapy is focused on helping people find their meaning. And an amazing story from the work Man's Search for Meaning that I've talked about on this podcast and that I can't recommend enough is the story of a man who was just distraught. His wife had died from an illness, and he was so heartbroken. And the way that Viktor Frankl looked at it was, well, would you rather that you suffered and now she's the one here heartbroken? Which just is like a world-changing perspective, right? It's like, how do you want to suffer? Do you want her to be at peace now and not in pain? And you're here dealing with the loss? Or would you want that for her? And so it's a perspective, right? It's a perspective that he gave me when I was lost, when I was anxious, when I was in a depressed state. And that he helped me realize that looking at what he went through, looking at the perspective he's given in this logotherapy, we as humans can do so much, right? And he showed me that hope is truly not a plan, it's critical. So Frankl used logotherapy on so many other patients. His book reached millions and millions of people around the world, myself and hopefully you included. And he developed this positive focus on life in the face of and after an unbelievably horrible event that shocked the world. The next person we're going to talk about that was a game changer, that realized hope was not a plan, is Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace lived in the 1800s, and the problem this is wild, it blew my mind, the problem she found for herself or realized that there were unclear capabilities of the first computer. Isn't that crazy? And the hope that she had was to develop the potential of the analytical engine, which is what this device was called, beyond simple arithmetic. The first computer that we call it, it did math, right? We needed it to help us do math. And so she saw this, and this is in the 1800s, in the mid to late 1800s, and she wanted to improve it. And so what she did is set an objective to say, I want to improve the analytical engine's algorithm to be able to handle a wide range of applications, right? So she somehow, way back then, figured out this thing can do a lot more than just crunch numbers for us. And I'm going to figure out how to make that happen. I found myself nowhere near that level, but doing that with like sheets and tools that we use to manage projects and portfolios to say, how can I squeeze everything I can out of this tool? And I would recommend you do that as well. Look at what you're using. Look at what you're using in your life and at work. So Ada Lovelace wrote the first machine algorithm, which laid the groundwork for modern computing. Imagine being a woman in the 1800s, not welcome in education or society. Certainly, probably not in this scientific space in the computing area, but she pushed on And she changed the face, and her work is still looked at today as groundbreaking and foundational to computers. Amazing. Alice Waters. Alice Waters noticed that fast food was taking over and healthy food was falling on the wayside. And go figure, people around the world, let alone in America, were getting pretty out of shape. And she realized she had the hope to educate people on how to enjoy delicious and more nutritious food. So what did she do? She set an objective that said, I'm going to provide education and a space that serves healthy and delicious food. Imagine that. And I get it. So in today's society, and even for the past, couple decades, fast food's been cheaper. It's more readily available than fresh food, especially for folks that are on low income. So there's a practical factor there, but it also increases negative health risks for folks that depend on that food. So with that objective, Alice Waters' action was to open a restaurant called Chez Panisse in Berkeley, California, where she could showcase seasonal and local ingredients. She was a huge proponent and a foundational founder, we'll say, to the farm to table movement, right? Which is astounding, which is great, which is now what a lot of high-end restaurants say, it's farm to table, which really just means it's healthy and it's good for you. But Alice noticed, hey, we're getting those nuggets too much from fast food. We're getting those burgers, those fries. How about these fresh meats and these fresh vegetables? And she made a place to do it, which, as you can imagine, if you've ever watched a show or heard anything about starting a restaurant, let alone a farm-to-table focused one, when everybody wants something delicious and savory, and I'm sure that's there, not easy to do. Our next person that ignited that hope was Dorothea Dix, who noticed there were appalling conditions in U.S. mental health asylums. If you've seen horror movies about mental asylums and patients being treated horribly and abused, it's reality-based stuff. And so she noticed that, she observed it. And her hope was to improve the treatment and opportunities and conditions for the mentally ill, because what she observed was unsanitary, unsafe, abusive, reckless, and just not the right thing to do. And so Dorothea Dix said, I'm going to do something about this. So her objective was to drive change in policy and funding to improve mental health care. And in the United States, mental health care funding has gone way up and almost non-existent, and then kind of back and forth, right? We used to have a really robust backbone of mental health in this country, and we don't as much anymore. It's better, but for a while it was defunded, and it got worse. But in Dorothea Dix's time, when she helped, she lobbied, she advocated for more humane treatment, and federal laws were passed. She changed the course of governmental regulation for mental health, whereas institutions and owners and organizers and whoever was involved in it had to take action and hit them where it hurts, in their pockets, right? Unfortunately, sometimes, or often, money is what drives people over doing the right thing. The last person for this episode, and again, this is a 4-part series, so I'm going to cover 5 people each series for the next 4 episodes, is Florence Nightingale. Someone near and dear to my heart as a former hospital corpsman. She noticed the appalling, and I've used appalling for both mental health, and she noticed it in military hospitals, right? I mean, imagine there's bloody rags, there's unwashed things, right? They're using saws, they're not cleaning instruments between people, and just nasty. Humans were nasty because we didn't know any better. We didn't know fully about disease. So she said, I want to improve the treatment and opportunities for conditions for soldiers that deserve better care and prevent death. So what's the objective? She collected data. She said, I'm going to collect data and take action to improve sanitation conditions for soldiers. Data-driven solutions. And this isn't a little bit of data. This is like she found out that, or estimated, and through the data she collected, that tens of thousands of people could have been saved. And so in the 1850s, she got to work. She collected that data. She developed hygiene protocols, right? Boiling bandages, scrubbing the inside of the hospitals and cleaning things, improving ventilation, better nutrition. The whole package. It wasn't just using soap. It wasn't just washing the bandages. It was better food for the injured, right? Moving air that was just stagnant and stale, which you can imagine the stench of rot and decay and just nasty. And so she is, the mother, the godmother, the grandmother, great-great-great-grandmother of modern nursing. right? The hygiene practices we use today, and even in my time as a corpsman in the late 90s, and certainly as an EMT firefighter, the gloves and the hand washing, the sanitation and the cleaning of wounds and dressing that you do, it wouldn't exist without her. So I share these 5 people because, one, they're inspirational to me, and I think it's cool to learn this history, because if we can live through something as awful as the Holocaust, like Viktor Frankl did, and then he can share with us to try and get better as humans, and then we can see this device that's going to do something in the 1800s and say, you know what, it can be better, like Ada Lovelace did. Or we can realize that the human evolution backwards toward fast food is not good for us, like Alice Waters did, and open a restaurant and teach farm to table and fresh food, which wasn't a new concept, but she really helped highlight it. And we can realize that our mental health institutions are horrible places to be, and they're not helping, and they're abusing and making it worse, like Dorothea Dix did. And then, like Florence Nightingale, changed the course of medicine, let alone military medicine, for all humans from the 1800s on. If they can do that, what can you do today? What problem can you see? What can I see? What hope can we ignite? And an objective, how can we have a specific and measurable and achievable and realistic and time-based thing that we can put together to help address those problems? And then the key is to take action and transform what it is we're trying to solve, that problem we identified. And that's a cycle, right? That's a cycle we can break down tasks. What's the problem? I want to get better at bench press. The hope is I can do this many pounds. The objective is I'm going to, each week do a little bit more. And by this time, I'm going to hit my number. And the action is I'm going to show up and work out every day. And that's a fitness focused one. But that's because it's simple, because it is that simple. It's just we got to plug stuff in there. So I hope this was informative. There's so much more information about Viktor Frankl, Ada Lovelace, Alice Waters, Dorothea Dix, and Florence Nightingale out there. Please go read it. I am not a historian by profession. I enjoy history and learning about how people solve things through process and action and fueled their hope. Thank you for fueling my hope, for listening to this podcast. I appreciate it so much. Go to hopeisnotaplan.org, please. You can follow the page there. I post for each episode. I've also got videos, again, of me being interviewed, me interviewing other people, and putting some back things in there from my podcast over the years. Follow me on @HopesNotAPlan on Twitter and Instagram. And just keep that hope alive, right? And use it to fuel the solution to a problem that you take action on. Stay safe out there, everybody. Enjoy your summer, and Godspeed.